Hey, it's Fox from InfernoFox Gaming. We have already gone through the first half of our Final Fantasy Stories ranking. Let's get to the second half. So, a gentle reminder about some of the rules to this ranking. Well, I'm only ranking the games in the series that I've played and rolled credits on. There won't be any games from various spin-off series, spiritual successors, or Final Fantasy in name-only games, and cameos and appearances in other games that aren't Final Fantasy games, such as like Kingdom Hearts. Not going to be ranking those. But let's go ahead and jump right in with number 10. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. Destiny. Cinematic. Nomura. I feel as though I'm ranking this so low because of Remake and Rebirth's single biggest weakness in each respective entries. Remake's biggest weakness is how overly long the game is. There is simply no reason the game needed to be like 40 to 60 hours long when it was pulled from like a specific 6 to 8 hour section of the OG. Rebirth's biggest weakness is absolutely the last hour of it, up to and including that ending. The game telegraphed Zack's importance by peppering his appearance throughout Cloud's journey in a separate branching timeline or universe of sorts. Yet, Aerith still dies, and this part was still done horribly wrong and confusing to us, the viewer, since it appears Cloud saves her. But then he doesn't? As he says goodbye to Aerith once defeating Sephiroth, who yet again is the last boss of another one of these entries, it made it seem like Cloud was free from Sephiroth's influence, until it's clear that he's not in the ending, where a new potential future was given with Zack's appearance at the end of Remake and Intergrade. All of this hope was abandoned with Rebirth and that end. This all fits the same kind of trilogy structure as something like the original Star Wars trilogy. The first entry, Remake, is like A New Hope, and the second, Rebirth, being Empire Strikes Back. Thematically, it makes sense, but it's just all ugh. But Cisne's back. Rebirth especially does a great job of having some surprising returning characters and giving depth to a number of existing characters. I absolutely love seeing Barrett's wife Myrna for the first time and then feeling the absolute heartbreak of the next scene where he sees her gone and the demise of his beloved hometown as well. Even if they didn't nail the ending of Rebirth, moments like this though were what made both Remake and Rebirth great. The expansion of the characters and the world is absolutely fantastic in both games. And I love that my buddies like Hardicus are in the remake. You know, the Whispers? It's a fun tongue-in-cheek meta commentary on the OG Final Fantasy VII fans who hate the idea of things changing from the original. Which is why I guess Sephiroth had his own Whispers in Rebirth, and why things sort of went back to the original, story-wise, at the end of that game. Number 9. Final Fantasy IV. Love. Redemption. Martyrdom. While the story itself seems played out at this point, this was the first true love story in the series with Cecil and Rosa. Cecil's best friend and rival, Kain, proves to be a foil of sorts between the two, as he makes it clear he has eyes for Rosa himself. It's an interesting dynamic that helps to flesh out the overall arcing storyline and provides a very late game redemption story for Kain, especially at the ending where we see him end up in Mount Ordeals. Redemption is the theme of the day, and it is especially true for our main protagonist, Cecil. After committing a genocidal atrocity at the peaceful town of Mysidia to pillage the water crystal for his king, Cecil realizes he cannot allow his hands or heart to be stained with blood and vows to fight against his king, who was also the man that helped raise him as a boy. He then proceeds to unknowingly commit another purge of yet another peaceful village, the one of Mist. Oops! At least his heart is in the right place, which unfortunately resulted in abandoning Rosa, as evidenced by her pursuing him and falling ill to the sand fever, failing to protect Fabul's crystal, and Rosa herself getting kidnapped by Cain and Golbez. The personification of redemption occurs, of course, when Cecil then casts off his Dark Knight sword and gains his father's power of light via a paladin class change. This entry also has a number of epic story moments that occur in battles. This includes the You Spoony Bard, the preambles leading to the last boss fight against Zeramus, Tella's use of Meteor, and my favorite being the return of Rydia. The world building is done quite well here too. This is also the last entry where the world either doesn't experience some sort of world ending or changing catastrophe or something like that hanging over said world like the Sword of Damocles. Examples of these kind of things include World 3 and the Void in Final Fantasy V, World Ruin in 6, Meteor in the Skies in 7, Time Compression in 8, the Mist Spring everywhere in Final Fantasy 9, and Sin literally just sitting in the middle of the air while the party just kind of flies around everywhere, capturing monsters and playing blitzball and fighting celestial crests and sigils in Final Fantasy X. Number 8, Final Fantasy 13. Bad ass. That battle system is hot garbage. I'm not sorry to say it either. No amount of rose-tinted nostalgia goggles that you all might have can change my mind. But the world itself is absolutely beautiful, and the characters are extremely well developed and have an immense amount of nuance. This includes Lightning, who Nomura himself said he wanted to create a female version of Cloud. Uh-oh, fans of GriffTubers, it's gender-swapping wokeness from back in the late aughts. Thankfully, Nomura had this vision via light shades within her stoic personality, military background, and somewhat clothing-wise. Unlike Cloud, she never loses her sense of self, even when she literally becomes a Seath near the end of the game. Other characters like Saz are also well nuanced. I feel like he's a direct reference to the character named George from the movie Get on the Bus, up to and including trying to save and protect his son. Snow is also played as the damsel-saving hero, except is he bad at saving said damsels? This includes not only his fiancée Sarah, but also fellow party member Hope's mother.
And what if that gets people around you involved?
What?
What happens when your actions end up ruining someone's life? What if someone dies? What then, Snow? How do you pay for what you've done?
I can't! Right?
Nora Estine. She was my mother. And she died because of you.
You're the one she meant.
The final confrontation ends up being another man versus God trope, but the setup for it is done pretty well. The overall theme of fighting back against the theocratic society is evident as we see Lightning and her party literally fighting against their fate as dictated to them by their l'Cie branding. And rather than follow their gods' contrivances to destroy Cocoon to summon the Maker, they fight their fate and win, albeit to the sacrifice of a couple fellow party members. Yeah, maybe the ultimate goal of these gods is a bit forced, but it's the journey rather than the destination that makes this game's story and characters special. Number 7. Final Fantasy XVI. Revenge. Fate. Identity. While this entry falls prey to the man versus god, reluctant hero, the chosen one, and many other tropes, many of these are either subverted or wielded to great effect on the progression of either the story or individual characters. The overall story feels more akin to what we've seen with Dragon Quest V, which is often regarded as one of the strongest and best stories in that series. After all, both protagonists have royal backgrounds that end up experiencing the loss of their fathers and great tragedy, become slaves, and fight to remove the yoke of their oppressors and restore the world to normalcy. While the hero in Dragon Quest V is fairly bland, Clive is anything but that. He not only wields the dominant power of Ifrit, but can also absorb the many different powers from other dominant wielders in a bid to end the world's literal blight. It also feels like Clive himself grows from each of his interactions from these wielders. Cid gives him the courage to lead the movement that he himself created. Joe gives him the assertion that he can both love and be loved. And heck, even enemies like Hugo Kupka teach him that subjecting his views in blind faith will only send him quicker to his own demise. Heck, even Clive's literal battle with himself is outstanding. While the soundtrack is fantastic, with Finding the Flame playing in the background, we're treated to an epic showdown that evokes memories of Paladin versus Dark Knight Cecil. Supporting characters such as Cid, Jill, and Joshua are well fleshed out, though admittedly the villains did seem pretty two-dimensional. They all come together to build a world that's well fleshed out, although again, a bit drab, especially in the second half of the game. I know these dull color tones were done for story effect, but it gave the game a 7th generation of video games sort of feel, and that's not a good thing. Number 6. Final Fantasy VIII. School time, orphans, romance. Some say the OMG, we knew each other the whole time aspect of the party's main characters is a bit cringe. And maybe they're right. I mean, the idea of the Guardian Force usage causing loss of memory wasn't really that great, as this is the only aspect of the potential memories that were lost being mentioned. What about Quistis passing her teacher's exams, Selphie's first selfie, Zell's first hot dog? These seem like they'd be core memories that should be mentioned insofar as them being missing. But this is honestly a small complaint to me, as we get a very different twist to the amnesia trope that's played out in the series and Mexican soap operas for years, and it sets up a number of core aspects to each of these characters. This twist on these various tropes is really where the 8th entry shines. Another example of this is how Squall seemingly is plucked from seed obscurity to become not just the leader of the party, but the entire garden. The ending reveals, of course, that an adult Squall met Edea with the dying Ultimecia, who not only inherits the latter's power, but gives the idea for creating Seed to ultimately fight the witches. Since Seed was created by both Edea and Cid, it makes sense that she tell her husband, Cid, about the adult Squall she met, and would also explain Cid's inborn trust in Squall's judgment when he finally meets him as an adult. Oh yeah, and there's that romance too, you know, the one between Rinoa and Cypher? He was still dating her when she danced with Squall at the ball that those two first met. How do you think she got there to begin with? It's interesting to think that Squall may have cucked his way into that relationship, but the reality is that when Cypher realized who Edea really was, he abandoned his relationship with Rinoa to help support his former matron back at the orphanage. Because everything goes back to that time, thus showing how important a revelation it was in the game. And it also features another theme in the game, which is all about love lost and love found. Cypher losing Rinoa wasn't just that, it was also about the loves, plural, that Laguna lost. Not just Julia, but Rain as well. We see that he thinks of the latter, especially at the ending, which plays into that theme. But the love found can be seen when the unrelated son and daughter of Laguna and Julia, respectively, finally find each other at the end. Number 5. Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. Rebirth, heroism, unity. Now this entry is an interesting one since the player's avatar is the literal embodiment of the silent protagonist trope. But my experience with this entry has taught me that this game's story is only as good as we, the players, make it. And while I've only played through the main game and Heaven's Word expansion, I was fully engrossed with the overall story. The supporting characters within the game, such as the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, got a lot of story and development themselves, making them really interesting and compelling characters. I honestly can't tell which is the strongest aspect, though, with this entry. Is it the world development that occurs with the story and overall gameplay, or is it the entirety of the soundtrack itself? Because even though we're not looking at any of the battle themes, the various themes that play in the many lands and areas that our Warrior of Light explores are orchestrated beautifully. Regarding the making of our own stories, the various interactions we have as players with one another can really make or break the game. My experience I had was almost totally positive. One of my favorite memories is attending a literal wedding two players had in the game itself at one of the cathedrals within the game. My only negative experience was my first playthrough of the last boss of the main game. Being in many phases, but with a party wanting to go through it for loot, they forced me to skip the scenes so I could focus on my role for said party. I then replayed this shortly thereafter just so I could rewatch these scenes, my new party be damned. Number 4. Final Fantasy VI. Ensemble. Upheaval. Purpose. The biggest weakness I feel this game has is the uneven amount of character development. We see my favorite character of all time, Locke the Treasure Hunter, get a large amount of character development in the first half, yet he ends up getting relegated as just one of many optional quests in the second half. We also see a great amount of development for both Terra and Celeste, yet we really don't see much else for the rest of the cast. Sure, there's additional scenes, such as the Coins of Fate flashback between Edgar and Sabin, or even dressing up Gao to meet his father, but it just doesn't really feel like it's enough. I feel more development should have been there for Kefka, at the very least. He's one of the greatest JRPG villains of all time, but we really don't know much about his background, beyond hushed tones mentioned in seedy pubs at the Empire's stronghold. And what the heck happened to Baron Arvis and the Returners? They raided Vector, but then they just literally disappear when Locke and Terra go to Thamasa? Well, okay, I know that was a lot. I mean, am I being overly critical? It's a habit of mine to judge things harshly. Note, I said things that I love. That said, story-wise, this has an absolutely stellar story wrapped in Nobuo Uematsu's finest soundtrack that he's ever made, giving life to one of the most interesting worlds in the series. This entry does love to use a number of tropes, of course, such as amnesia, as Locke sees this happen to two different women in his life. Man versus evil empire trope is played to very full effect here, but thanks to that villainous court jester, he
Destruction to all!
both sides of the trope and ends the world. We then move to the man versus God trope, though I felt this was played really well. Even in a world that has ended and is slowly dying, the party reunites, finds their purpose, ends the godlike threat, and balance is restored. It's these purposes and where the game does focus on character development is where the center of the story lies. This includes Locke's journey from a failed protector to one whose heart is finally released of its own prison, now able to finally love another. Terra's journey also encompasses understanding herself. She, being a product of love from two sources thought to be literal worlds apart, she realizes that even though she is different from everyone around her, she too has the ability and propensity to love others. And it is this love that allows her to stay fully human and exist once magic has disappeared from their world. Number 3. Final Fantasy IX. Identity, morality, growth. The overall story is a pretty standard one. We see a merry band of thieves hired to kidnap a nearby kingdom's princess. In the process of doing so, we're treated to a delightful world steeped in fantasy, which at the time was a welcome change from the more modern-like worlds of the 7th and 8th entries. I've heard from others say that the story itself isn't the strongest part of the game. Maybe this is due to a number of familiar JRPG tropes. such as our hero Zidane not having a firm grasp of the memories where he came from, or even the escalating threat starting from say the Black Waltzes to a literal fight against a god of death at the end of the game. The ninth entry is meant to be a callback and loving homage to entries of the past, while giving it the best technological affectations available to the console at the time. I will say that the soundtrack for this entry is very strong for the many areas that Zidane and his crew explore, as well as the many story beats that occur in the game. I can't mention the soundtrack without a nod to the track You Are Not Alone. This track highlights one of the best scenes in the game, and it's one of my favorites within the entirety of the series. More importantly, it highlights the game's absolute strongest suit and why it ranks so hard on this list, and that is character development. Almost every single character in the game experiences some sort of growth in its entire run. Zidane, for example, goes from being a carefree womanizer with a penchant for causing trouble to a stalwart ally for his friends, willing to protect them all despite his own creator's purpose instilled within him. Vivi goes from being like a shy young boy, easy pickings for con artists and the like, to understanding how he was created and the magnitude of his own morality. Heck, even less seen NPCs like Ruby and part-time worker Mary get their fair share of attention when either met through the party or being presented in optional active time events. How well these NPCs were developed has often made me wonder if this is the reason why the Trails series NPCs are so well developed and have fully fleshed out backstories. The weakest character development probably has to be with Amarant, though this can mostly be attributed to how late in the game he's introduced as well as when he joins the party. But regardless, the characters within this entry are so well done that it's no wonder so many people hold this entry in such high regard. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII. Environmentalism, consequences, masterpiece. The overall theme of this entry is centered around the consequences of late-stage capitalism run amok. After all, the evil corporation, Shinra, places money and profits over literal life. Whether that life is the cost of human lives or the literal lifeblood or life stream of the planet, it's all the same. But what I found so compelling about this game is the larger butterfly effect of consequences that have occurred from a number of choices that were made prior to what the story is shown within this entry. The setting of the stage and how we ended up where we're at in the game is told so well within the entry. It's no surprise the story has been so compelling for fans, and the devs as well, since they like to keep coming back to this game's overall universe. I'll admit there are a few cringy moments within the game's story. This includes stuff like any of the optional content at the Honeybee Inn, the Tifa Scarlet slap fight, and that really odd Yuffie Corneo side quest at Wutai. It's kind of cringe and admittedly not really necessary in the grand scheme of things, but the story itself with the many twists and turns and whatnot is compelling to the end, and it's only something I've experienced in video games a lucky dozen times or so. We do see a number of familiar tropes here, such as the amnesiac trope, though this one is subverted in a way to paint Cloud as the unreliable narrator. We also see the standard man versus empire trope, though this ends up turning into man versus god, much like how Final Fantasy VI was, where 6 erred by not explaining the backstory with the villain nearly at all. We can almost sympathize with Sephiroth as the fallen hero. Regarding the story itself, of course, the various beats are wrapped in a soundtrack that matches it perfectly. The music feels like a seamless part of the environment of the many areas that Cloud and his team visit, as well as part and parcel for the various scenes that characters themselves are in. How the feeling of dread plays over the party and for us the player, as our party wakes up in the Shinra building prison, following that trail of blood. How heartbreaking it is hearing Aerith's theme play in full as Sephiroth sees to her end in front of Cloud. Or the rising crescendo of the main theme as Cloud's memory is revealed that he truly was there to save Tifa that time 5 years ago. These moments are a few of many that not only highlight the absolutely stellar soundtrack and story, but the overall character development. The level of heartbreak over losing Aerith was real, but it also felt real that Cloud was just like myself when I played this game. a dorky young teenager wanting to join the military to impress the girl he crushed on from afar. Number 1. Final Fantasy X. Live, laugh, dream. If the battle system of this entry was in contention here, that would throw this entry way off the spot. I've already talked about that on my previous video ranking the series entry by battle system. Check that video out and sound out your anger there about my opinion to help drive up my engagement. Definitely, please do. But to me, the best overall story goes down to the 10th entry. Both this entry and Final Fantasy XIII are more or less linear hallways leading the player down to their next destination. But this 10th entry keeps us compelled with the stronger music and mood it evokes, the better paced story progression and narrative structure, overall immersive world, and greater character dynamics and development. And while 13 had a few plot twists, holy hell did the 10th entry have a boatload of them. Many of these ranked from the obvious, such as Yuna having to sacrifice herself at the end of her pilgrimage, to one that shocked me at the time I played it back in the summer of 2003, Titus being but one of many dreams of the faith. That last one left me thinking after I completed this game. Shallow thoughts such as wondering if Titus wasn't real, then how could he interact with everyone in Spira had entered my head. But deeper ones resonated with me, up to and including realizing why Titus was so outgoing and honestly sometimes ostentatious. It was his way of saying, I'm here, I'm real. Except, of course, yeah. Other moments were just fantastic story-wise, of course. Not just the goodbye at the ending between Titus and Yuna, and even their romance at Lake Macalania, but even like stellar moments like,
This is it. Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands.
I mean, this was the entity that ended his life for real. Now he gets to return with the son of a former ally and finally gets to seek his revenge. Just amazing moments like that. I love the story and character development here. Now, I know Final Fantasy X, it isn't my favorite entry within Final Fantasy. That's always going to go to Final Fantasy VI. And again, I don't think the 10th one is the best. I've probably gone to my head, Final Fantasy VII is the best, but Final Fantasy X tells the best story, and it left a really huge mark on me, allowing me to expand my mind in a great number of ways. As I wrap up things here, bonus little tidbit I noticed, and I'm sure you guys did too, if you're a big fan of this wonderful series like I am, I've often noticed many of the scenes and or exact musical themes that play at the beginning of these games also play near the end. For example, in the 4th entry, the prologue theme plays at the beginning of the game when Cecil and Kain exit Baron Castle. That's also playing as the party is about to fight Zeramis. In the 5th entry, Ahead on Our Way plays at the beginning title screen, while Bart is riding his Chocobo Boko, but it also plays as he and the rest of his team are about to fight Exdeath for the final time. Final Fantasy VI's title theme plays not only at the very beginning, of course, but also as Kefka descends from the heavens in the very final battle. Are these nods to the very first Final Fantasy, whose story was also about a time loop and the end being related to the beginning? It's something to really think about. It's something I've thought of from time to time. And just let me know in the comments section your thoughts as well. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.